Hello everyone. This video is about the control of heart rate. The heart can beat by itself, as I'll explain in a moment, and as you may already know, but the rate at which the heart beats is modulated, that is, regulated up and down by the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Okay, first, how does the heart beat by itself? There are cells in the sinoatrial node of the heart, which are pacemaker cells. So these cells, instead of being normal electrically excitable cells that have a stable resting membrane potential, instead have an unstable membrane potential that, as you can see here, gradually depolarizes between action potentials instead of being at a flat, steady level, as you expect from, for example, from studying neurons. So what causes this is that at rest, and we can see this more clearly in the other panel of this figure, at rest there are some channels that are open, and these channels have a wonderful name. They're called funny channels, I sub F, so funny current, the F really stands for funny, is a way for positive charge to enter the cell, mostly sodium, entering the cell even when the cell is not undergoing an action potential. So even at rest, these cardiac cells have a slow sodium current that is entering the cell and gradually depolarizing it. Eventually, it depolarizes to threshold, and you get opening of voltage-gated calcium channels. Then the calcium floods into the cell very quickly, producing a fast depolarization. And then, as in all action potentials, the downswing or repolarization phase of the action potential is created by the opening of voltage-gated potassium channels, which allow potassium to move out of the cell and return it to its resting value. But it doesn't rest, right? It depolarizes gradually again, and then has an action potential. So this is your heartbeat. Slow depolarization, that's that time between beats, and then the depolarization, which produces the muscle contraction that is your heartbeat. Okay, so that's how the heart beats by itself, briefly, and that heart rate is controlled or regulated by the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system, as you probably know, has two parts, the sympathetic neurons and the parasympathetic neurons. And the effect of these two divisions of the autonomic nervous system on heart rate is that sympathetic nervous stimulation will increase the rate at which your heart beats, and parasympathetic stimulation will decrease that rate. The question is, though, how does it do that? How do autonomic signals make the heart beat faster or slower? Well, here's a flowchart, and I've hidden the parasympathetic part for now so we can focus on just one half. In the medulla in your brain, there's a group of neurons whose job it is to do this, to regulate heart rate. And coming from the medulla, then, are these sympathetic neurons, therefore, that release the sympathetic neurotransmitter norepinephrine. And that norepinephrine binds to beta-1 receptors, which is a kind of norepinephrine receptor, a kind of adrenergic receptor, on these pacemaker cells. So it says on autorhythmic cells, autorhythmic meaning they create the rhythm themselves. What happens once this receptor is bound by norepinephrine is that there is a cascade of second messengers, and the key second messenger in this particular cascade is cyclic AMP. The cyclic AMP then binds to individual open IF channels, that is, those funny channels, and when it binds to them, so these are the channels responsible for this depolarization, when it binds to them, it keeps them open longer. So you have all these individual IF channels, and each one is going to stay open, each one that's bound by cyclic AMP, downstream of the sympathetic stimulation. Each one is going to stay open longer, which means that over the whole population of channels in that cell, at any given time, more of them are going to be open. So at any given time, more sodium and calcium are going to be passing through these IF channels. So they depolarize to threshold much faster. That is, you can think of the slope as being the thing that changes here. Right? The slope of this depolarization is going to be steeper when there's sympathetic stimulation because the channels that create that depolarization are more open, or more of them are open at any given time. And you can see that change in slope. In fact, it's quite dramatic. If you look at the normal depolarization rate shown here in gray, and then the depolarization rate shown here under sympathetic stimulation. If you look at the heart rate in the normal state and in the sympathetic state, you can see that the result is that you have a heartbeat more often under sympathetic stimulation because the time between beats is shorter. Because what you need to depolarize and trigger the next beat is happening more quickly. Okay, so that's the effect of sympathetic stimulation, and the effect of parasympathetic stimulation is simply the opposite of that. So it's the same concept, but in this case, when acetylcholine from the parasympathetic neurons binds to their receptors, and it binds to the muscarinic type on those cells, the net result is, again, a change in ion permeability, but now we have less calcium permeability, less sodium permeability, and more potassium permeability in the cell. So you have more potassium leaving the cell. And so that's going to make the time it takes to depolarize to threshold longer, the time it takes to get up to the point where you trigger that action potential by reaching the opening voltage of these voltage-gated ion channels takes longer. So again, if you look at the normal slope here, and then the slope under strong parasympathetic stimulation, you see that the heartbeats are going to be much farther apart. In fact, across this slide, there are 3 heartbeats in the normal state, and only 2 heartbeats cover over the exact same amount of time under parasympathetic stimulation. So it can really slow down heart rate. Okay, so in sum, the heart can beat by itself, but the rate is controlled by autonomic nervous system signals. And the way that works is that these autonomic nervous system signals modulate the ion channels that control how long it takes for the heart to depolarize to threshold between beats. So the heartbeat itself, the depolarization of those cells itself is not affected, but rather the time between beats, the time that is needed for that funny channel depolarization to threshold is made shorter by the sympathetic nervous system and longer by the parasympathetic nervous system. Isn't that neat? All right, that's all. Let me know if you have questions.